Hey, this is Nishant, and by the end of this video, you are going to learn the exact 5 steps that you need to take to supercharge your memory power. In fact, I would say that the first step and the 5th step that you're going to learn today are not only useful for improving your memory, improving your learning power, but in fact, these steps, the 1 and 5, are useful for learning anything you want in your life. Now, the very first thing, the most important critical aspect that you need to have is the belief that you can really improve your memory. Now, unfortunately, one of the things I see many people tell me is they think that, Nishant, I don't think I can improve my memory. Now, here I like to give you some inspiration by this quotation that I really like very much. Whatever the mind of a human being can conceive and believe, it can achieve. This is by Napoleon Hill, and I like this really very much because if you can believe it, you can achieve it. But the thing is, if you don't even have the belief that I can improve my memory, unfortunately, it's going to be a very long journey. So it's all about the mindset. Now, how many times you might have read stories about people who went on to achieve amazing things in their life only with sheer belief in their ability. Only in the belief in their idea, just with the belief, they went on, but they had fantastic success. So the step number 2, 3, 4, and 5 will actually give you some specific things that you need to do. And once you get a little bit of success by using these steps, you automatically will improve your belief as well. So what is the second step? Attention. Now, we are living in a world of multitasking. We're living in a world of interruptions, distractions, rapid change. So the thing is, you need to slow down. You need to be present when you are learning or when you're remembering any new information. Now, attention is actually a very important skill if you want to take your memory to the next level. Now, unfortunately, with the kind of life that we're living in right now, many people started doing what you definitely know as multitasking. Multitasking is, you're doing multiple different things at one time. You're doing this thing and quickly you change your focus to something else and then you come back and do something else. If you're doing all these things, where is the focus? You don't really have the focus. And especially when it comes to learning, when it comes to remembering, you need to have not just attention, I would say you need to have 100% attention. So here's some quick ideas that I can give you right now. Number 1 is, whenever you're learning, step number 1 is set a time limit. Okay, I want to learn something for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes or 50 minutes. Set a time limit. Let's say you chose 30 minutes. So go to your phone and set the timer for 30 minutes. Or actually even take something which is not a phone, which is just the timer, and set the timer for 30 minutes and then start learning. It could be reading, or it could be watching a video, it could be going through some information. Whatever way you are learning, for the next 30 minutes, all you need to do is single tasking. You just focus on the things that you need to learn until you hear the beep from the timing device. Only for that duration, you should not be looking into anything. So step number 1, set a timer. Step number 2 is choose a place where you are least likely to be disturbed. And then for that duration of 30 minutes, do not do anything. In fact, I'll tell you one thing. Just by doing this thing, you will have an extraordinary quality of learning, because unfortunately many people, when they are learning, what's happening? They learn for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and boom, you get distraction. They check their email, they check social media, or they get distracted by something, and then what happens? You lose all the momentum. So you got to do not multitasking, but exactly the opposite of which is single tasking. So that's step number 2. Now, step number 3 is association. Now, here's the thing. The way the human brain works is by connecting information with something that you already have in your brain. So let me give an example by showing a quick illustration right now. So let's say this is your brain. What you see right now is your brain, and your brain has a lot of information that you've gathered from your time you're born until now. You have a lot of information. This is the information that you already know. right? So you learn a lot of information from your primary school, from your secondary school, from your work, I mean, wherever you're learning so far. So you actually have learned a lot of information. Now, let's say you want to learn something new now. Let's call it X for the time being. And this is the new information that you want to remember. The easiest and fun and the most amazing way of how you can store the new information is by connecting the new information with something that you already know. So basically what you're doing is you take the new information and you connect it with something that you already know. And by that way, what happens is you're connecting, you're relating with the information that you already know, and that is going to really help you to have a strong association and a strong memory. So let me give you a simple example, and this is like many years ago. I was having a problem with learning proper and improper fractions. Now, one day I went to my dad and asked him, hey dad, can you tell me, I'm having a problem with proper improper fractions. So what is the way of how you can remember it? Because I'm always getting confused, is numerator greater than the denominator? Is that the proper fraction? Or is the other way? It's all very confusing. And this was like more than 25 years ago. And my dad asked me to do something, and I can never forget the definition of a proper fraction and improper fraction. So let me just show you what exactly my dad asked me to do. First of all, my dad asked me, hey Nishant, can you draw the picture of a human being? So I said, of course, as you can see now, I'm not good at drawing at all. So that is what I came up with many years ago. Now that is a picture of a human being. Now actually, obviously I'm doing this on a computer screen, so it's a bit messed up right now, but you get the point. So this is what exactly I have drawn. And my dad looked at that and said, wow, that's amazing. And you know what? That is a proper fraction. He put a line like this and said, Nishant, as you can see here, the head is small and the body is big. For example, 2/7. Now, which is small, which is big? This is 2 is small, 7 is big. Now that is a proper fraction, because it looks like a proper human being, right? Proper human being has a small head and a big body. And then what really made the difference for me is when he did this and he draw something like this. I said, Nishant, have you ever seen a person like this in your life? So, and then he drew something like this, and the moment he drew this, I knew exactly what was happening, because this is improper. So you don't see anyone like that. So example is 8/3. 8 is a big number and 3 is a small number. So that is improper fraction. And just like that, boom, I could learn the definition of a proper fraction, improper fraction, and there's no way I'm going to forget that, because what my dad did was he took the information that I already know, which is how a human being looks like, and linked it with something that I want to know, which is proper and improper fraction. And that is how he actually helped me to remember the information. 3. Now let's go to step number 4, a very, very critical aspect again, and that is review. Now, unfortunately, many people, what they do is after learning, they quickly close the book, or they quickly close the learning session, and then they walk out of it, and in some cases they never come back to it, and they're missing out on the review. Now here's the thing, it's impossible for you to learn something for a long time if you do not review, and you need to know when should be the first review. So let me give you an example here. So let's say you have a time slot here from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. So 9 a.m. you start the session and you go all the way to 10 a.m. So that's just 1 hour block, and the orange bar that you see, that is your learning session. Now what happens is the moment you come to 10 a.m. many people just stop learning, because they say, yes, I've learned 1 hour, I need to take a break. Now here's the thing, you definitely need to take a break, but before you can earn that break, you have to do something, and that something is the review. You need to spend 4 to 5 minutes time for a 1 hour session. I would definitely say spend 4 to 5 minutes time in making sure you go for a quick review. If you do not do that, you are not going to have a long-term retention of that information. In fact, how many times it happens to you that you read a book or you watch a video, and within 24 hours of learning it or watching it, the next day you can't really remember most of the information? Why? does that happen? It's because people most of the time are in the learning mode. Learning is good, don't get me wrong, but what you need to do is, if that is important information for you and you want to learn the information for a long time, you want to supercharge your learning, what you need to do is spend a few minutes time on the review right after the learning session ends. And that's a critical thing, right after the learning session ends. If you are learning or reading from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., 9:30 a.m. is when you do the review session, because that is fresh in your memory and you can do that. Of course, you definitely can have another review session later on in the day or the next day, but you definitely need to do the first revision right at the end of that. Now you might be thinking that, Nishant, it's going to take a little bit more time. Now here's my question for you. What do you want? Do you want to quickly end the session and you forget 80% of it maybe, or 50% of it? Or you want to spend that little bit of extra time, maybe 4 or 5 minutes time, and make sure that you really comprehend the information, quickly go through the review, and then ensure that you have a higher chance of retention of that information. So I know what you want. You want long-term retention. That's the reason why you need to have a review at the thing. And of course, like I said, remember I told you the first step and the last step are critical for mastering any skill, not only memory and learning, but for anything in your life. And the next thing is practice. Now here's a very interesting thing, right? If you want to be a good public speaker, what do? You practice more, right? You speak more. If you want to be a good writer, what do? You write more. If you want to be good at swimming, what do? You swim more. If you want to be good at remembering, what do? You remember more. You need to give remembering faculty of your brain a lot of practice. So what I mean by practice in this thing is you need to practice paying attention, single tasking, because it's not easy, because all of our lives we've been doing a lot of multitasking. So you need to start kind of a project for yourself and say, hey, you know what, for the next 1 week, for the next 15 days, for the next 30 days, let me just practice all these things. Step number 1, I'm going to have the belief that yes, I can have a good memory, I can learn faster, I can remember information longer. Have that belief. Number 2 is pay attention every time you're learning something. For the next 1 month, have a project. Say, okay, every time I'm going to learn something, I'm going to block the time off and I'm going to do only one thing and one thing only and nothing else. And number 3 is try to see how can I associate the information that I'm learning right now with something that I already know. So the magic question that you need to ask yourself is, how can I link or relate this information with something that I already know? Right? And then practice reviewing. So you learn, review, learn, review, learn, review. Practice that for the next 30 days and you see what happens. Because here's the thing, there's no one on the planet who became a master just by learning. People became masters by learning and by implementing. You need to do practice, you need to do the action, you need to implement, and that's how you can become good in anything. I went from a person with a lousy memory to breaking a Guinness record in memory to becoming a grandmaster of memory. And how did I do that? I did it with all these 5 steps.